Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. Today, I would like to discuss the difference between joy and happiness. Robert, what are your thoughts? Start us off.
Well, I look at joy and happiness as close. They're sort of closely related. I think about joy as something more temporary than happiness. Happiness might not be necessarily permanent per se, but joy, at least for me, I get joy out of doing certain things. Maybe going to sporting events, watching something on television, enjoying time with my family. That's where I get joy from. Happiness, I look at that as something more long-term. Maybe long-term is a better word than permanence.
Simon, you were nodding. You want to say what you were thinking?
So, joy for me is a more active and a more point in time, whereas happiness is more of a state.
Good point.
And you can have you can be generally happy, but if you were generally joyful, people would think you're a little bit weird. Hallelujah, the world is wonderful, the sun's come up. So, yeah, right, less caffeine maybe. I think that for me is the primary difference. And joy has an active nature, and we have the verb rejoice, whereas we don't really have a verb equivalent of happiness.
That's interesting. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I've learned a whole bunch of stuff straight away. I've actually picked up on what Simon and Robert have said, and immediately it's changed my thinking, because I was busy thinking, where are the overlaps, what's the difference, and all those sort of things. So I'm just going to pitch something in, having learned already. I want to pitch something in. What's the shape of the difference? If there's no joy and happiness, does that mean you are inevitably miserable or sad? Or is the absence of joy and happiness something different? Is it a neutral state? So looking at the gap between the two, what does that actually imply?
So I agree.
Happiness has a negative, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree that joy is short term. I also feel like joy is something you can create. And so I think that if you don't have any joy in your life, are you unhappy? I'm going to go with no, but you certainly are more melancholy than you would be if you have joy. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So maybe if you can create joy, like you can do something that gives you joy and pleasure, and is that spontaneity, that time limited spike of endorphins, is happiness then something that you don't create so much as happens to you?
Well, when I did one of these the other day where we talked about how do you know if you're happy? And basically the conclusion that the four of us who were chatting about came to is that happiness is something that you notice after the fact, or that it's just kind of a nebulous thing. So, yeah.
I can go to maybe memories, distant memories. And one thing I always say is that often, if this makes any sense, memories don't become memories until they're memories. And I say that because I think of so much, especially growing up, that at the time I either thought it was going to go on forever, or it wasn't anything to sort of cherish. But now looking back, and now I'm seeing it more, especially whenever I see, pictures of our children when they were babies or when they were much younger. So that's when the memories really kicked. Like, oh wow, we were doing A, B, and C. So as far as that goes, yeah, I think that does really, really tie in.
Here's a question then. I know I'm sort of pitching more questions than statements here. But
that's okay.
If you are generally happy, if you're a level person with good relationships, good marriage, good home, generally happy, and then something negative happens, like the death of a parent or a loved one, does that necessarily take away happiness, or does it just become the negative of joy? Is it the inverse of joy?
I would say no, what you just described. I'm sorry, Steve. Yeah, it's the absence of that joy, that temporary absence of joy. The happiness may still be there, and it likely still is, but I don't think maybe one certain event in itself will takes the happiness away.
Well, and from a psychology point of view, there are a lot of studies that show that people basically have a status of happiness, whatever that is, and events can happen that either rise it shortly or lower it. Say the death of a loved one would lower it, something really joyful would raise it, even like winning the lottery, boom, but then they come back to that status. So that does speak to something unhappy being actually unjoyful, which isn't the word.
Oh, so it's the returning back to there's a certain point where it changes, but we end up coming back to a certain, okay. I don't know, think about that.
Yeah, it's your kind of emotional set point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although we do say to each other, are you happy with this? Or are you unhappy with this? So that's
different
also
than being happy.
Yeah, exactly. But that kind of indicates your emotional set point towards a particular aspect of something.
I don't have enough knowledge of another language to be able to say with any degree of certainty, but I'm wondering if that's a factor of English. I wonder if that's a semantic or a linguistic thing. So in another country, you wouldn't say, are you happy with it? You could say, are you content with this? Does this meet your requirements? But the word happy in English has become this
catch-all,
do-it-all word.
One thing I can say, and I believe in Spanish culture, they use the word contento, which means content. I think that's what it is. So yeah, that touches right on that point.
And of course, we have the children's nursery rhyme: if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
Oh,
it kind of implies you can be happy and not know it, which is.
I think that's true. I think it's possible to be happy and not realize it.
Okay.
This goes back to my negative thing, my looking at the space rather than at the buildings, looking at the space between the buildings, is that if you're happy and you don't know it until something happens to take that happiness away, do you then reflect back, to go back to your point, Robert, to the memories and say, well, I was happy then, now I'm less so.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that's the perfect point. Yep.
So where does happiness come from?
Is it an overarching of the life to this point and the projection of where you think your life is going?
And your degree of contentment with it, I guess.
I think contentment. I think you're right there, Simon. I think it's because people can be content with very little and be happy with what to somebody else would be a minimalistic lifestyle or a hermit existence or a poverty-stricken existence in whatever sense, you know, whether it be financial or emotional or intellectual. If they are content, they will find happiness. Somebody else can have everything. You know, is Jeff Bezos happy with his $126 billion, living alone on an estate, divorced? Is he happy?
Yeah, who knows?
What brings him joy? What brings him joy?
And you know what else is interesting that's just struck me? Differently abled people seem to be so much more joyful than the rest of us.
Yeah. Maybe they're taking the small wins in a different way from us, from me, you know. I mean, I don't know.
So happiness is also your expectations are factored into the happiness.
I think
whereas with joy, there's an innate reward in whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Yes. That. Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but yes, I think about it. And I mentioned sporting events earlier, and I know when I go there, the expectation is that I'm going to have some type of fun with it. So I'm going in with that. Of course, I want my team to win if that's, you know, what's going on. But that's you put that very well, Simon. Yep. And I think when it comes to happiness, it's different. This is really getting my mind going, gentlemen. So,
Robyn, can I ask you a question that's directly into your sphere of influence? And
very quickly, because we only have a very short minute.
Okay. The endorphin spike that you get with something joyous happening, a touchdown or a goal or whatever.
Dopamine, serotonin.
Yeah. That spike, can you ever hope to maintain that? Could you have enough spikes to bring your level of happiness up?
That's what people try to do when they take things like cocaine. They're trying to maintain it. It's not possible. Your body can't do it. And unfortunately, I have to cut us off there or I won't be able to post this. So I appreciate you guys having this conversation with me. It was much more in-depth and interesting than I thought it might be, and I thought it would be. So thanks so much for being here.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks. Good talking to you all.